think that this little bit of information might be a game changer for some of you guys. How to use an air pump on multiple fish tanks. I can make a lot out of a little, and a main part of my fish room is the air system. Now, if you're also like me and you watch a few live streams during the week, I was on Aquarium Co-op's live stream the other day, and Corey was getting kind of frustrated over having to explain how to use an air pump. How to use an air pump on multiple fish tanks. And maybe this is a concept that's kind of confusing for some people, and it was for me too, even when I first started. And even more recently, I had an issue with my brine shrimp hatchery that I couldn't figure out. And I think that this little bit of information might be a game changer for some of you guys that are having issues balancing multiple tanks. Maybe you have one that's running heavy and the other ones are running lighter, and you're like, what's going on with these different sponge filters, or whatever you're using the air for. The air's just an air stone maybe. Why is this one running heavy? Why is that one running light? How can I get them to run at the same pace or same amount of airflow, water flow, whatever you want to call it? This video right here, I'm going to make some of those things clear. Now, I am not a physicist, so I'm sure there are people that understand the aerodynamics, and I guess to a point. I mean, this wouldn't be hydraulics, but airflow through pipes and stuff like that. There's definitely people that know that stuff better than me. Where I know though is how to get the most out of a little, because as you guys saw with my recent fish room tour, I feel like that's where my strength is at. I can make a lot out of a little, and so I'm going to teach you guys to do that same thing. So let's get into it. I guess let's start with just talking about the general idea of this stuff. Okay, so basically, when you have an air pump, you're gonna you'll buy whatever size air pump, and that's gonna be related to the size of tank you have. So for me, when I'm talking about this, I'm dealing with 10, 20 gallon tanks, 5-gallon tanks, but this is applicable to pretty much any size tank. It just is gonna depend on what you can get out of it. If you have 200-gallon tanks and you're gonna try to split, like one of the filters that I have, or one of the air pumps that I have on 2 100-gallon tanks, you're probably not going to get the airflow you want out of that. You're probably going to need something that's a lot bigger. You're probably also not dealing with sponge filters if you're dealing with a 100-gallon tank. But I just want to be clear that this is all relative to your situation, so you need to keep that in mind when you're listening to this information. But what I'm going to be dealing with is like, hey, say you're trying to build your own breeder rack at home, or say you have a couple 20-gallon tanks or a couple 10-gallon tanks and you want to run them off of one air pump. All right. So the things that are going to affect this are, obviously distance, how far the tank is away from the air pump. The closer it is to the tank, the easier. Okay. So you want to not have long runs from these air pumps. If you have a super powerful air pump and your tank's farther away, not going to be that big of a deal. But most of our tanks, or most of our air pumps that we're dealing with, are going to be aren't going to be the super powerful ones that you might think of. Okay, I need some teaching tools. Let's grab them. So we got airline. All right, airline comes in a couple different diameters. So if you're going to be running multiple tanks and you maybe have a couple different airlines running around, you're just going to use that stuff, make sure they're the same size. All right, if you have one that's thicker and then one that's thinner, and you run those in the same line, that's going to affect how your air flows. You want as much consistency as possible. So if you're running airlines for multiple tanks, make sure you have the same diameter of hose through and throughout. And the funny story about this is I actually had my 2 brine shrimp hatcheries, and I had just kind of used some airline, and I never realized that I had 2 different diameters, because I've gotten stuff from a bunch of different people throughout my fish keeping career here, and I was just throwing the stuff and I couldn't balance it. Couldn't figure out what was going on, and I figured it out because one of them had thicker diameter hose and the other one had thinner diameter hose, and it made it come out, like the air come out of the one way faster, even with all the stuff that I'll show you how we balance that air. And yeah, so I couldn't figure it out for the longest time. Finally figured that out, and now I have 2 perfectly balanced brine shrimp hatcheries. All right, so then, like I said, diameter matters with the airline. All right, and then we have stuff like this. So we have different connectors. So we have splitters. This is like a Y connector, and then they have like the straight 90 connectors, or these guys, which these are just like, you can connect two different hoses together, or two different air lines together to make it longer. And then, like I said, the 90-degree connectors. All right, and then I'll show you how all those connect in my system, so you guys have an idea of how to use those. And then they have stuff like this, which these are really nice. They're probably more expensive than the stuff I'll show you. But yeah, so these are just on-off valves, and they kind of, that's full off, and then on, full on. All right, and so it's got a gradual amount of air that it lets out, and lets flow through into your system. And so that's how you can control some of the air. And then some of the other common things that we have are air stones. And then we also have these kind of air stones, which these are actually adjustable. So you can kind of unscrew them, and depending on how much you unscrew them, it'll let more air through or less air through, just depending on what you need. Those are nice. I used to use them in my brine shrimp hatcheries, but what I found out is the eggs would actually get stuck in between those little crevices in there, and then they would start following up your hatches. Not what you want. You want nice, clean hatches, so I stopped using them. But all right, so let's get into how all this stuff works and how you can set it up and balance it nice and easy on your own. Okay, so that's a Whisper Quiet air pump. It's 60 to 100 gallons. I have my tanks kind of under-filtered because I rely more heavily on plants. So I really have the air pump just to have like an extra source of air, you know, just to kind of ease my mind. All right, and then you can see, oh, where is it? Where is it? It's hard to see, but you can see the air pumping through there. All right, that one's got the air pumping through there. Good luck seeing it in there because that's a Vallisneria forest. This one actually doesn't have air pumping into it because this is a tank I'm running kind of like a no filter setup. I have a sponge filter sitting in there, but I just don't have it running. So, like I said, that's the Whisper Quiet 60 to 100 gallon pump. These I really like, but I actually believe that they're on sale on Amazon because they are discontinued. I think, don't quote me on that, but I think that's what's going on. So I don't know if they're going to sell this exact style anymore. But all right, so we'll move from there. You see that I have two outlets. One goes to each side of my system here. So to focus really on our main point, it's this kind of stuff up here. Okay, so we have a three-way split. We have the feed line that comes up to this three-way split right here, and then it goes down to my tank. All right, and then we split off to each tank. At each individual sponge filter, I have a adjustment valve. And as you can see, if I loosen the adjustment valve, it's kind of hard to see on this one. Let's see. If I loosen the adjustment valve here, so this one's off. If I loosen it, we got a bunch of air coming through, and then I tighten it. All right, so we don't really want that one on. Okay, so we leave that off. All right, but that's the basic idea. So if you have, what you're gonna need is, if you're trying to run multiple tanks off one pump, you know what? I actually have a more applicable build. Let's jump over there. Okay, so for most people, you guys are gonna have air pump similar to this. This is like what most people have. You have the airline coming right off there. All right, and then we got a two-way splitter. All right, all these hoses are the same diameter, even though they're different types of hose, they're the same size. So that part doesn't really matter. If it's soft or if it's like the harder airline, whatever. All right, you split off, and then what you have is these on-off valves, like I said over there, that adjusts the flow of air coming through your sponge filter or your air stone or whatever. So what you're gonna do is, when you turn this on, one of them might be running really heavy. So maybe the top one's running heavy. So you'll tighten this down and it'll cut air to that. which will force more air out of the bottom tank. Okay, so let's see that air sponge filter running right there? Now I'm gonna loosen the air, and you'll see that that slowed down, kinda. And this one has more air flowing now, and that's because I loosened this one. All right, now if I tighten that, we'll slow the airflow. We're gonna loosen it just to where it's got a trickle of air flowing out there. All right, and that amount of airflow is applicable to you guys. So if you want more airflow, then you have to get a powerful air pump to get to both tanks. If you cannot get the airflow that you want out of both. Okay, but we'll go into that in a second. So then you can see that we have it kind of balanced. They're both flowing at the same rate. They both have their own on-off valves, so I can control them individually. So if either one is running heavy, I can tighten or loosen depending on what I need. All right, so that's a really easy, simple way to balance multiple tanks on an air pump. There's different ways of doing it. You know, some people use the PVC. Like I said, I'm not a physicist. I think you would need a much more powerful air pump to use the PVC. So I think this is more obtainable for like the average hobbyist that's just in their house and they don't want to have to think too hard about anything. They just want to be able to clip some stuff together. All the airline that you use, you can cut with some scissors. You can just kind of run it. You need to keep in mind that if one tank is farther away, so you got like one right here and then you got one way over here, right? The one that's closer to you will get the air first, okay? So the farther the run, the harder it is to balance those things. You need to think about it as like, I don't know, pressure, electricity, water, air. It all works in the same kind of way. It's pressure and resistance. So with this kind of stuff, it's fighting to go far, and you need to make it as easy as possible to go in all directions in the same amount of resistance. So the farther the distance, the harder it is to go to that distance. Shorter the distance, the easier it is. And if you keep that easier for your pump to maintain, it'll be easier for you. So that's why I have my system split in a certain way that makes it kind of branch out evenly. Like I have like an array kind of like this versus like an array like this. You know, I have like 5 tanks over here, 5 tanks over here. Mine's kind of split evenly. Every run kind of runs in the same length. I'm rambling, but yeah, that's the idea, is to make your pump easier to run, have the same diameter of hose, have the same length of distance, and to kind of even out all those inconsistencies, you need those on-off valves. One thing I forgot to mention, that the reason I have my hose ran up high, what you noticed when I was showing you guys here, is this hose is ran above the tank, right? So all my connectors go above. So if I lose power, the water can't go up, all right? It could go down. So if you lost power and your hose, excuse me, if you lost power and your hose was draped over, or your airline was draped over the tank, there's a possibility that it can create a siphon and start emptying your tank very slowly, but it would empty it. And if you're gone all day, it's a lot of water underground. So to keep that from happening, you can use something like this, which is a one direction air hose. So all these are brand new, so I'm gonna do something here, guys. So, all right, you could blow that way, but if you blow this way, it doesn't work, okay? So that means that your air will constantly be able to be supplied, but if it shuts off, the siphon won't be able to happen because it's only gonna go one way, which is a nice safety feature to have for those of you guys that are, you know, have maybe an air pump that you can't really run the line above the tank, and maybe you want it nice and clean and you don't want to see any of that stuff, so you hide it in the back. One of these is definitely necessary. All right, so that is a super easy, basic way of balancing all this stuff. And if you're going to be doing this stuff, I would definitely suggest using one of these Tetracolor tropical granule container. If you guys have any extra fish containers or just Rubbermaid containers. Put all your airline supplies, label it, and that way if you have a specific piece go bad, or if you're adding a new tank or you're doing whatever, you can find all your stuff nice and easy. And yeah, so another simple video, guys. Like, comment, subscribe. If you guys are interested in any of this or comments about this or have any questions about this, comment, let me know. I will answer questions. Got free time during the day, so let me know, guys. Have a good one. Thank you guys so much for watching.